Okay, hello. Welcome to today's live stream. Let me get this going on Instagram over here so we can visit with our friends on Instagram. Okay, here we are. And we're in business. Okay, cool. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. We are talking today about toxic friendships. And let me just set this up for us. All right. So we're talking about toxic friendships and what to do with these. I don't know if you caught this past Monday's podcast, but I did a podcast on this topic of how to deal with toxic friends. And it was, I thought, a fantastic conversation. I had the great honor of speaking with Dr. Marissa Franco, who is such an authority on the topic of platonic relationships. And I really love her message because she brings to this a attachment focus. So one of the main gists of the podcast on Monday was that our, let's be real here, our attachment styles really impact all of our relationships, but also our friendships. And so we often think about our attachment styles as only coming into play in romantic relationships, but that is absolutely not the case. So if you have the opportunity to check out that podcast interview with Dr. Marissa, I would strongly encourage you to do that because I thought it was fantastic. You know, I talked to a lot of people, but she was incredibly knowledgeable. She's like top notch. So check that out. And let's move right on. I'm not going to do a big rundown of the podcast today because I've had so many questions coming through from you guys in advance, and I wanted just to address all of them. So if you have questions, please put them in the comments. I have the comments pulled up right here, and I am paying attention to them as we talk. Also, if you did want to ask me a question for today's live stream, but it feels a little bit more personal, I invite you to do that using a private chat bot, essentially, that I set up just for this purpose. You can do that. Growingself.com is my website /dear-Lisa. And if you ask me a question through that, it will be totally anonymous. Hello. It'll be totally anonymous, but I'll get it right now in real time and be able to speak to it on this live stream today, but in a way that protects your privacy. So let's just jump right into this because I have gotten so many amazing questions about how to deal with toxic friendships. And I want to make sure that I have time for all of them. And if you are dealing with a very difficult friendship, please let me know what's going on so that I can provide you with some perspective and maybe even some guidance in this situation. Okay, so let's dive right in. One of the questions that I've gotten in advance are related to how to set boundaries. Actually, a number of questions that came in advance that were related to how to set boundaries, but like for different iterations of difficult friendships. But here's one that I absolutely loved. It was, "Dear Lisa, how do I handle a codependent friend that is turning toxic?" And I thought this was so interesting because I'll just tell you, when I think of codependency, I think of it in terms of like the classic codependent language. So a codependent person is someone who is trying to regulate the emotions or manage/control the behaviors of another person. And so when I heard this question, it made me wonder if you feel like your friend is becoming codependent, are you saying that that makes you feel like your friend is trying to manage you, regulate your emotions, keep you out of trouble, like get you to do certain things, and that you're kind of feeling controlled by them? So because I think sometimes people can toss the word codependent around in different ways. And so I just wanted to check in on the meaning of that. And so I don't know if you're here. I know that you asked this question in advance, and I know that some people listen to these after the fact. So if you are here with me live right now, tell me more about what you mean by codependency, and I'll speak to your situation. However, if you feel that someone is trying to control you or manage you in a way that doesn't feel good for you, I think the first and most important thing that you can do is tell them how you are feeling. So have a conversation. One of the big things that came out of my interview with Dr. Marissa Franco, again, fantastic interview. Please do check it out. It's on my website, actually. If you go to growingself.com, go to the blog and podcast section, and it's the featured podcast, just because it came out this past week, so you can access it pretty easily. But she was talking about something that I thought was really interesting, and she's like, if you do ultimately decide to end a friendship, it should not be the first time that someone is hearing that aspects of your friendship with them are not feeling good for you. She said, sit down and have a conversation. So that would be my first piece of this, is like, have you done that? Because if you haven't, I think it's always possible in every relationship for something to seem very clear and very obvious to us. And unless we are articulating our thoughts, feelings, and perspectives out loud in words, it may not actually be that clear or obvious to other people. And that's true for romantic relationships. It is true for platonic relationships. So the first order of business is to sit your friend down and say, hey, I feel like you're trying to control me in inappropriate and or unnecessary and or unwelcome ways. What's up with that? And can you stop? And be ready to, hopefully have an emotionally safe conversation with them. Provide some examples, just in case they really don't understand what you're talking about, which is also possible. But then see how that goes. And that's where I would start. Now, if you have that conversation and it keeps happening, or if you have had that conversation and it has persisted, then it may need to turn into something else to say, hey, the next time you do this, here's what you can expect from me. Because remember, boundaries are never about managing someone else's behavior or controlling someone else's behavior. They're only about managing and controlling yourself. And so when you set boundaries with someone, you are saying, I don't like this. I don't want to participate in this. And if this happens again, here is what you can expect from me. And only set those boundaries, meaning, this is what I'm going to do for things that you are very confident in your ability to carry out. And so again, we could go into examples. It depends on the situation, but give that some thought. Like, what's a non-negotiable for me? What am I willing to do? It might be just ending a conversation. It may be leaving the space, but that would be up to you to figure out. So anyway, I hope that perspective is helpful. So great question. Again, if you're just joining today, we are talking about toxic friendships and how to deal with them. I've gotten a bunch of advanced questions, so I'm starting with those. If you are dealing with a toxic or weird feeling relationship, platonic relationship, I would love to know what's going on with you. You can leave questions in the comments, or if you would like to ask questions anonymously, come on over to my website, growingself.com. And you can growingself.com/dear-Lisa to ask a anonymous question through my little chatbot thing that I will get in real time right now, and I'll be able to speak to it, but without divulging your identity. Okay, and actually let me just go ahead and speak to a question that came in through the chat bot. So I will not say hello, I will call you Miss M, but thank you so much for your question. And so the question is, I have spoken to my friend before about how hard it is for texts to go unanswered. And she's aware of the problem, but she says she can't help it. She's been a lifelong friend, and it isn't that she doesn't care. And so I guess I would be curious, if I was your therapist, if I was your coach, to be like, what is she saying about why it is so hard for her to respond to texts in the moment? Just to have that perspective be part of the story. And I'll share, and I want to, it never feels good for anybody when we text and it's like crickets chirping, right? You're like, hello. And I will also tell you that, like, with my friends at this point in life, and also this is true for me, I have friends that have demanding jobs where they are in back-to-back meetings all day long. My friends have kids of varying ages, little kids, teenagers, and I tell you what, everybody is so next level busy. It's like, it's crazy. It was like comically difficult for me to schedule a coffee date with two of my friends. We wound up meeting, but we had to like schedule it 8 weeks in advance because it's so next level. So I guess my question for you is, what is going on with that? And is it possible that your friend may be in a life space where it is actually really difficult for her to be in the moment present, texting, responsive due to her life circumstances? Or is she just like trust fund girl laying around on vacation and like looks at her phone, sees you texted and is like, yeah, I'll do that later? Because that would be a different story, right? And I could understand how, that would mean something else about the relationship, that either she doesn't want the same kind of relationship that you want to have with her. She wants to have it be more casual, that she doesn't value that type of responsiveness and immediacy as much as you do. And, the truth is that different people want different things in relationships. And that's also related to things like attachment styles. So going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this, and if you check out this podcast from Monday, you'll learn a lot more but about how your attachment style shows up in your platonic friendships. And so if you have an anxious attachment style, meaning that you are very focused on relationships and like want to interact and want a lot of immediate feedback, and if people aren't treating you the way that you want to be treated in the moment, it like does things to you. And so if you are that type of anxious attachment style and bringing that into friendships, and you are in a friendship with someone who has either a more secure attachment style than you do, or certainly a more avoidant attachment style. But let's just say, for example, that your friend is actually pretty securely attached. Her okayness with spaciousness and not needing to kind of like be right there with you all the time may feel good and healthy for her, and it might feel really bad for you. So I don't know if this answers your question or not, because I think in your question it was sort of like between the lines. So how do I get her to change, right? And so what I'm bringing to the table is, let's think about this a little bit differently. So are you personalizing potentially fairly neutral behaviors that are just a byproduct of her very busy life? Is there something going on with your attachment style? Or is this person also perhaps not that great of a friend for you? If you have like, here's my definition of a really good friend, and this person is operating like significantly outside of that, it is also okay for you to say, I need to pursue relationships with someone who can be more emotionally available for me in a way that feels good for me. And I understand, being friends with somebody for a long time, like your whole life, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, it matters. Like, it's difficult to replicate that kind of historical intimacy. And it's also true that you can have a lifelong friend who you value and love, and don't necessarily want to end that, but that's also maybe not the kind of friend that you want or need at this point in your life. So Anyway, I hope that that commentary helps and helps you make sense of what might be going on with this situation so that you can make decisions about where the growth work is here. All right. So thank you so much for your questions. And I am looking at all these other fantastic questions. And so I'm going to try to answer as many of them as I possibly can. And if you're just joining, today we're talking about toxic friendships and what to do about those. So let's go to a question from Instagram. Let's see. Let's go to. All right. Oops. So, hold on. I have to do something else to get this to show up. I have way too much technology sitting on my thing right now. Okay, so we are going to go to this question. Okay, the question is, I feel like I attract, all I attract is toxicity and have to take a break from so many toxic friendships and struggle tremendously with this. This is so interesting. And I guess if it's okay to ask, I would love to know more so that I can provide some meaningful insight into this. So when you say that you attract toxicity and you have to end toxic friendships, like what are some examples of this? Like who's your type? Do you have a type of toxic friend that you tend to attract? I would love to hear more if you would be willing to share. And I know we have a little bit of a time delay, so I'm going to hang out for a second. And again, if you're just joining, today we're talking about toxic friends and how to deal with them, and I'm taking your questions. So I want to hear what your toxic friend type is. Are they super clingy and needy? Are they are they self-destructive? Does it feel like they're using you for something? Does it feel like you need to take care of them? I mean, many flavors of toxic friends. Am I right? So tell me more about what is going on here. And hopefully we'll get some more information. Oh, hey, thanks for asking. Yes, this video will totally be posted later, not on Instagram, but on YouTube. So if you look me up on YouTube, here, I'll show you my stuff. Let's look at this for a second. I don't know if you can see this on Instagram, but if you follow me, my YouTube handle is just at Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. Go to my YouTube channel, and then all the live streams are posted there. So, okay. Well, unfortunately, I think we're not getting more information about taking a break from toxic friendships. So anyway, listen, with any relationships, here we go. Gossipy, taking advantage of me. Here, let's look at this for a second together. Okay. Gossipy, taking advantage of me, try and bring me down from my focus on wellness and like going to the gym, narcissism, just to name some of the recent. Okay. That is so awesome to know. And so then I guess what I think I would encourage you to think about in order to stop this pattern is to consider, almost like you would if this were romantic relationships, like what typically tends to attract me in a friend? Like, what are the kind of people that I try to make friends with? Because there might be something going on with the type of people that you tend to gravitate towards. And so just to think about the friends that have demonstrated themselves to be gossipy, not supportive of your wellness, untrustworthy, taking advantage of you, like, how do those friendships start? And are they more historical friends? Like, are they people that you got to know in high school or an earlier stage of your life that you've kind of grown out of? Or if they're newer friends, my next question would be, where are you meeting these people? Like, this will sound kind of weird, but like, what is your source of friends, because I think that people tend to move into environments and start engaging in activities that are reflective of their character, their values, and their own hopes and goals. So, for example, you mentioned being interested in health and wellness, and so I'm wondering, like, are these people that you're meeting at the gym? And if not, like, start talking to some of the people in your fitness class. Do you know what I mean? Like, to try to connect with people who are more in alignment with your values and the things that are important to you, because chances are you'll have more in common and values in common, so that it will feel like a more supportive relationship. But additionally, the other thing that is true, and this is invariably true, is that it takes a long time to get to know people. And this is why it is really important to take that time to get to know people before you get all the way into the deep end of the pool. This is true for romantic relationships as well as friendships. So, like, how could you possibly know that someone is going to be gossipy or narcissistic or is going to take advantage of you before you get to know them a little bit? And I mean, and here's the thing that's like so hard. People who have the most questionable character in some ways, like people who actually have narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality tendencies, histrionic tendencies, they tend to be some of the most charming, fun, witty, charismatic people you will ever talk to. I mean, like, these are the people that we meet out in the wild and like feel chemistry with, you know, and it's weird. Like, you sort of have to reprogram yourself around who am I attracted to? And when you come to understand, and this isn't always true, but I mean, like, if you look up narcissism or antisocial personality disorder in the DSM, like, that's actually one of the defining features, is being a fantastic conversationalist. So, I mean, just to be thinking about that as well. And, you know, so you meet somebody great, you're like, oh, we have so much in common, hitting it off, and like proceed with caution and watch what they do over time. And if you get indications that somebody is gossipy, meaning that they start telling you things about other friends or acquaintances that they really shouldn't be, you know, like they're not being good friends to other people, you just got some new information around, okay, I understand who you are and what you're about, and what I can expect from you if we're going to be friends. And I think I don't want to do that. So, you know, again, then that's when you can like back out slowly, and you don't have to be mean to them. There doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's not a friendship that you want to pursue. So that's why it's really important to be just watching for these signals of people's character early in the game, and just understanding that the way that they treat other people is going to be sooner or later the way that they treat you, because the way that people behave is like a holograph. The way that people behave in small ways and small situations tends to be reflective of their character writ large. So that would be my advice for you, thinking about your values, your character, what you want, where you're going to connect with those kinds of people, but then with everyone you meet and with all new friends, take your time to get to know people. Yeah, because it takes a really long time to get to know people. Okay. Such amazing questions. And thank you so much for bringing this up. I love it. And again, if you are just joining us today, we are talking about toxic relationships and how to navigate them. And so if you have questions for me, I would absolutely love to hear them. And let's see, why isn't my thing working here? Okay, so let's go back to some of the questions that came in advance, because I really want to make sure that I am answering these for you, because they were so good. And I always appreciate people taking time to submit questions in advance. Okay, so here's another question, and it is, how do I set boundaries and manage the guilt with friends that you don't want to let go of? Okay. So then I think reading between the lines here to set boundaries and manage the guilt of setting boundaries. Okay, so I think what you're saying is that you have friends, you have people in your life that you need to set boundaries with. They feel like they're turning into toxic friends for you, and that you feel guilty when you set those boundaries, but doing so is necessary in order for these relationships to be sustainable, and that you want them to be sustainable. You said, I don't want to let go of these friends. So how do I manage the guilt of setting boundaries? Okay. So I guess one of my questions for you, follow-up questions, if you're here with us today, would be, have you had those conversations with your friends about how you're feeling and what do you need? Or is it feeling yucky to you maybe, and hence the guilt, because there hasn't been the communication necessary to help them understand what is going on? Because if you are setting boundaries without having had courageous conversations with people, people will not understand why you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes, just to say, it can be easier to just like take the action without having the courageous, sometimes awkward conversation, particularly if you tend towards a more avoidant attachment style. I'm going to say that out loud. I don't know if it's true for you, but this can be a thing. I'm probably in this club, right? I mean, I need to work hard at intentionally being like, no, I need to have a courageous conversation, because I think my MO, if I'm not being really intentional, is just to like, all right, let's just not talk about it. I'm very good at avoiding things. So anyway, that would be the first thing, is to help them understand. But I think also, the guilt, if you are experiencing guilt, so guilt is a feeling that is actually an awesome feeling. Guilt gets a bad rap, but there is such a thing as healthy guilt, and that can be our conscience. Our conscience can be giving us information, and healthy guilt is, you're doing something wrong. You are doing something wrong, and you could handle this better. So the first thing I would ask is just to like check in with this dark emotion and say, is that true? Am I doing something wrong? Could I be handling this better? Could I be approaching this in a more compassionate or empathetic way, and also have appropriate limits? Am I having courageous conversations? Do I need to validate my friend's experience? Like, what is guilt trying to tell you? And on the other hand, there is also unhealthy guilt, where your feelings, your thoughts are telling you you're doing something wrong, when in reality you aren't. And so this is where it gets a little complex. Like, do you have old programming around right, wrong, and how people should behave, et cetera, that is making you believe that you're doing something wrong, when if you really check in with yourself, check in with your values, check in with your wise mind, check in with reality, like do some reality testing, and reality is like, no, this is absolutely appropriate. You need to be doing this. You're not doing anything wrong. What that tells me is that you're having this unhealthy guilt because there's this gap, right? And so the path towards your emotional freedom, therefore, is now correcting the story that you are telling yourself. So if there's some kind of old story that is not true, that's telling you that you're doing something mean to people and that's why you feel guilty, you need to stop that and very intentionally and deliberately rewrite that story, because our mindset is 95% of the time the reason why we are feeling whatever we are feeling. So when you change your mindset, you change your story, you will change the way you feel about the situation. And it sounds like you're setting boundaries anyway, but it will make you feel better about doing that. You'll be able to do that with a clear conscience if you're not doing anything wrong. You just need to get your story into alignment with that. And so, I am also talking about this. Like, it's very easy to do. This is the kind of thing that I do in coaching and that in therapy, certainly, although in therapy, therapists are often looking for like psychopathology and all of this, but like this is very straight up. Like, you have a goal, you want to set boundaries in a healthier way, and you want to not feel badly about it. So let's take a look at those thoughts and tweak that so that you can feel good about taking positive action that helps you maintain relationships that sound like they're really important to you. So, okay, thank you. Love it. All right. And if you are just joining me, I would love to hear your questions. So today we are talking about toxic friendships and how to deal with them. I would love to know what's going on in your life. If you would like to submit a question to me anonymously in real time rather than leaving it in the comments, please do so. You can come to my website, growingself.com/dear-Lisa. And let me see if I can send you this link in the comments. Okay, sending now. So if you want to ask an anonymous question, go ahead and do that right there through that link. And I am ready for more questions. So again, we got a ton of questions in advance. I'm going to go with another one of these. So here's another fantastic question. So, dear Lisa, I ended a friendship with an avoidant last year. I'm anxious, the writer says. And my friend group doesn't know yet because I'm in a different city. How should I tell them? Should I wait until it's necessary to tell them? So, okay, you had a friend who I'm guessing is part of the same friend group and who has avoidant tendencies. You have anxious tendencies, so that's a good call, right? I mean, if you needed more out of that relationship than they were able to give, and you were saying, you know what, this isn't really going to feel good for either of us, fantastic call. Your friend group, who knows both of you, doesn't know yet because you're in another city. Yeah, I mean, so your choices are to proactively tell them, wait until it's necessary to tell them. I mean, and I guess like what I would want to know, and I don't know if you're here with me in this call right now, and if you are, I would love to hear more about what's going on, but like what leads you to believe that anybody would care that much, I guess, would be one question for you. And I hope that that's okay to ask. I mean, I don't mean that to be cold at all, but like, yeah, sometimes the things that are important to us just aren't as important to other people. And also, if this person that you were friends with is like objectively has an avoidant attachment style, chances are that they didn't have a particularly close, warm relationship with anybody in that friend group. Like maybe they would hang out and do fun things, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, you certainly could bring it up to friends if you felt like it, but I mean, you'd have to read the room a little bit. And I think certainly it would always be a safe call if you're going home or going to be visiting people and people are starting to plan activities. You could say, oh, yeah, let's plan a get together. And I should tell you that I ended things with so-and-so a few months ago. It might be weird if they were there and I was there. But also, again, if it's a relationship with somebody who has an avoidant attachment style, they also might not care as much as you do. Like they could be at the same event and be like, oh, hey, what's up? And have a conversation with you and not really think anything of it. Because again, if you have an anxious attachment style, you are much more oriented around relationships than they would be. So I think that really the choice is yours, right? I mean, what would be most comfortable for you in that situation? And if you don't want to be in the same room with that person, you certainly don't have to be. But I feel like there may be a little bit of a gap that you are sort of projecting your own relational style onto that of other people a little bit, which is completely understandable. I mean, I think that we all do that, but yeah, especially again around a real deal avoidant person. they don't really care that much about relationships, so it's fine. Okay. But anyways, that's why you can't be friends with them, right? Because it won't feel good to you. Okay, so these are fantastic questions about toxic relationships. I love it. And if you have questions for me, ask them. We have just a couple more minutes here in this live stream together. I have to hop off at about 12:45. So if you want to ask me something, drop it in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going through this list of fantastic questions that have come through in advance. So, okay, let's go back up here. All right. So another fantastic question. How do I set boundaries with friends that are controlling and overbearing? Okay, awesome question. And I think that we may have addressed this a little bit when we first started talking. I don't know if you were here at that time, but another one of our happy campers was in a situation with somebody who they were feeling like was being codependent with them, which, is sort of code language for being controlling and overbearing. And so that first piece of it was having communication, right? Like a courageous conversation with this friend about how you are experiencing them. And actually, let me send you a free resource. Okay, here it is. growingself.com/communication. This is a free 2-part webinar, totally free. You can take it on demand. It comes with 2 videos with me, a workbook, all the things. But it is about healthy communication skills. And I put this together for couples primarily because, a lot of couples struggle with communication. But if you take this on your own, you will get a lot of insight into your communication style, as well as skill development for healthy, constructive, courageous conversations that could be really helpful for you as an individual with the people that you're talking about, finding controlling and overbearing, because that is step 1, is saying, I am not having a good time in this relationship. Here's why. And approach it with curiosity. What is going on with you when you try to, control my behavior in this way? That is how I am experiencing you. And then just be open to what they have to say, because they may be, experiencing controlling you as very, very different. You might hear, I'm worried about you, I'm trying to help you. And I will also just say that, again, going into attachment styles, if you tend to have a more avoidant attachment style, you will feel like people are being controlling and overbearing when they might not objectively be controlling or overbearing. It might just feel like that to you because they're trying to engage with you in a way that you don't want to engage with people with. And that's okay. But again, in a friendship, in any relationship, people need to understand you. And if you're going to be friends with them, it's also on you to understand where they're coming from. So have a courageous conversation about what's happening, provide specific examples so that they understand, and also come with here are my ideas for how to improve this. So when we go out together, I don't need you to be calling me to make sure that I got home okay, or that I XYZ, I'm an adult and I'm fine. So please stop that. And if you say that out loud and they don't, you can say, I understand this is coming from a good place. I'm going to be turning off my phone. So you can expect that I won't be answering that call or texting you back because I don't like it when you do that. So you can say that out loud. But also, again, relationships are reciprocal, and any relationship, we need to find a middle ground around, and it's almost a negotiation. Like, what kind of relationship do I want to be in? What feels good for me? And what kind of relationship do you want to be in? And what is my obligation to you as your friend to give you at least some of that, so this situation also feels good for you? Or, on the other hand, do we want to mutually decide that neither of us are willing to take steps toward that bridge towards the center? And that's okay too. Ideally, though, it would be an authentic, open, vulnerable conversation. Yeah. So I hope that perspective helps. Okay, so fantastic question. Let's tackle a couple more here. All right, so here's another one. Thank you so much for this question. This is so good. Okay, how do you manage dishonest friends who you know if you confront them, they will be triggered? Okay, so I think you're saying you have people who are dishonest, who are lying to you, and if you say you're lying, they are going to flip out, be triggered, freak out, like it won't end well. Okay, so again, communication is key. And so to be able to say this out loud to them, and not you're lying, but to say, I feel like when I try to have courageous conversations about things that are happening in the space between us, I feel like it triggers you to the point where it escalates and it feels like I actually can't talk to you about important things. Do you know what I'm talking about? Again, here, I'll put this resource in front of you if you want to work on these kinds of conversation skills yourself. I mean, many people are not comfortable with having those kinds of courageous conversations. Oops, let me take away that comment here. And so you can check out that free resource around courageous conversations. But additionally, the other piece of this is it's okay to think about what is good for you and make decisions that help you populate your life with relationships that feel good for you. So, like another resource that I have for you, here, let me pull this up so that I can share it with you, is related to the fact that when we have anxious attachment styles or tend to have even like self-esteem issues, it can sometimes lead us to maintain relationships with people who really aren't good for us. So again, if you have a anxious attachment style, you're trying to like sort of stick to people, and perhaps you have a lifetime of experiences of being in relationships with people who could not consistently meet your emotional needs. And so this feels kind of familiar for you, completely understandable. But also, if you tend towards low self-esteem, that can be another thing that can make you willing to put up with behavior from people that is not actually that great for you. So I'm going to put another free resource in front of you. Again, if you come to my website, come to growingself.com and grab this free self-esteem test, and I'll send you the link to that too. But yeah, so it's a test. It probably has 20 different questions, and it'll send you back a report that will give you insight into your current levels of self-esteem and where maybe to work on this. Because in my experience, when people get very invested in their own personal growth work, either through coaching or therapy, and they become healthier, it starts to change their perspective of these kinds of toxic relationships. So things that had felt tolerable enough in the past, when people start working on themselves, they feel better about themselves. They feel more confident in their own self-worth. They feel more confident in their capacity to go out in the world and connect with people and create new, meaningful friendships. It sort of turns into this, oh my God, like when their friends behave that way. So I think also perhaps if you did that type of personal growth work, this may feel much less fraught. It'll turn into I don't want to participate in that with you, right? So it's, this person is going to lie to me. So it's not even having a confrontational conversation about it, but it turns into this, I don't know if this is a relationship that I want to continue investing in. Because remember, having courageous conversations is something that we do with people when we care enough about the relationship to try to work on it and fix it. And it is absolutely okay, especially, if you get to know somebody over time and know that this person does not have the type of character or values that would lead you to want to be in a long-term relationship with them, to just not. I mean, you could certainly have a big dramatic conversation if you wanted to, but you could also just stop hanging out with them, particularly if it's a friend. So anyway, those are things to consider. And we are over time. I am so happy that we have this time together on Thursdays. Thank you again so much for your questions about how to handle toxic relationships, toxic friendships. And oh my goodness, I'm just noticing there are a couple of more questions that I didn't get to answer. Okay, really quickly, these are just so good. Okay, first, what do you do when you're put in the middle of two friends that are always fighting, with each other? This one is actually really easy. All you have to do is say, I don't want to hear about it. I love you. I want to hang out with you. I'm happy to be an emotional support person for you in other ways, but that I am also friends with Brittany or whatever, and I don't want to hear about what's going on between the two of you. So talk to somebody else about Brittany. I love you. Let's go out and have fun, and I want to hear about everything else that's going on in your life. So I hope that helps. And then another question, let's just jump into this super quick. Let's go to how to set a boundaries with an avoidant person if I'm anxious. Isn't giving them space just accommodating them? Yes. And so, and that is part of the experience of having a relationship with anybody who has avoidant tendencies, is that needs to be understood and accommodated to a degree. And also, if you are going to build the bridges to the center in this relationship, would be able to have a conversation with this person and say, hey, I know that you need a lot of space because that is your style. And I have anxious attachment tendencies. I want to talk to you more than you want to talk to me. I want you to engage with me more than you're engaging with me. Is that possible, right? Just putting it out there. This is something that you're willing to do for me, and this is how I'm going to be giving you space, and see what they say, first of all. So if they're like, yeah, sure, okay, that's, okay, we just passed level 1, but the way that people behave is always the real test, right? So then see what they do. And if you have that conversation and they agree to it and then they don't follow through, you got enough information to know that this is probably not a relationship that's going to feel good for either of you. People with anxious attachment styles, and this is hard to take in, but it needs to be understood. In this live stream, we've had questions about what do I do with my friend that is controlling and overbearing? People with anxious attachment styles who are trying to get people to behave in ways that will then soothe their anxiety can frequently come across as being controlling and overbearing, because they're trying to relate to people in a way that's gimme, 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 that doesn't feel good to other people. And so there's this thing of, how am I managing myself? Am I trying to control other people in order to manage my own anxiety? And is there growth work for me to do here? And if there is, let's take that to a therapist, right? Or if you are actually in a good place, but you just want more engagement from this person, have that conversation, see if they are willing to meet you in the center, be willing to compromise, and just understand that this relationship isn't going to feel quite as close as you might want it to be. And is that okay for you? But then see if there's follow through on both sides. So that is how to handle that. Okay. And then one last one. Okay. Let's actually go over here, and I am going to make these live streams shorter someday. Okay. Okay, that was only a partial question, and I think it may actually be more about a intimate relationship. All right. So you guys, I think we did it. I think we got everybody's questions. Again, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I love doing these live streams and I hope that they're helpful for you. And I will be back in touch next week on Thursday. We are going, next week's is going to be really good. Next week, we're talking about how to grow and evolve if you didn't get what you needed as a child in order to develop in a really healthy way. So next week's podcast, I'm releasing an interview with Dr. Dan Siegel, who is a super big deal. He's written so many books on attachment styles, parenting, personal development, growth, like kind of coming from that attachment wellness perspective. It's so fantastic. So check out this coming Monday's podcast. It was really good. And then so next Thursday for the live stream, we're going to be talking about how to help yourself heal and grow if, you lived through some challenging things early in your life. So join me for that. Okay, you guys, thanks again so much for hanging out with me today. We're going to end this and I'll see you next time. Take care.